Hello everyone and welcome back. I have my one more replay for you guys today for this Wednesday because I have plans for a little bit later and I can't stay on streaming too much today, so I apologize for that. I will be streaming probably tomorrow, maybe like one or two replays Friday, and then I do have replays I have reserved for my Saturday segment, which is of course Gold and Below, so I am going to be continuing that segment on Saturday. So let's get into my last replay for today. It is a Diamond Terran versus Terran. It doesn't look like it's going, it is definitely not a ladder match. This is going to be on the new, really cool loading screen for Dual Sight, actually, as a matter of fact. This wasn't the map that I thought it was when I saw that loading screen. But okay, spawning in the right position on Dual Sight, the like Baron Mordor-ish side of Dual Sight, we have the green Terran player, Metal Guitarist, and spawning in the left position, the lush Shire side of the map Dual Sight, we have One Word Poem. Now, I think I've actually seen both of these guys on the Terran discussion forums and general forums for the Battle.net forums, which is why I said that they were notable Terrans on the forums. So, these guys are pretty active in the Battle.net community, and I'm happy to be able to cast one of their games. This is actually one of the unspoken things about StarCraft 2 that I'm just going to preach about for a few minutes, because while we wait for these guys to establish their builds, this game is like, it's one of those games where it's like, you have to love it if you really want to play it. It's not one of those games you can just kind of sort of get into. Like, the people that play it, they love it. Well, not everyone. I've talked to several people that play this game that say that they hate it. But then again, those are the same people that throw in, like, 8 hours a day on ladder sessions, and they're like, I hate this game. So I don't really know how much I believe them when they say that they hate this game. StarCraft is one of those games that requires a lot of passion to really be into it. And the thing is, at every single event that I've ever gone to, at every single thing, and whenever I talk on the forums and online communities and stuff like that, there is a lot of passion in this community. There is a lot of real kind of drive to further the cause of esports. Like, esports is that one banner right now that kind of like unites a whole lot of nerds together and creates like a common force for good. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I'm always just so caught up in how great this community is when you're out like amongst everybody. Like, the forums are really kind of a poor indicator for how great this community actually is. People are much nicer in person than they will ever be online. So I really encourage anybody who watches this cast or who watches a recording of this on YouTube, if you haven't had the opportunity to go to a Barcraft or a LAN tournament or anything of that nature, if you ever have the opportunity, please take it. It is a very worthwhile experience for you to understand just how great this community actually is, and it makes you have a whole new appreciation for this game, because now every single person you meet on the ladder is not just some it's not some like player of that race that's going to cheese you or something. They are like actual players that are just as passionate about this game as you are, who are just looking to have some fun and are just looking to potentially make some friends online. So that's one of the reasons why I'm hoping very much so that come Heart of the Swarm and come patch 1.5, because Dustin Browder was already talking about it, that the new social features that they put on for Battle.net 2.0 will actually solve most of those problems and help bring the community a little bit closer together online. So that's my rant about the community. Let's get into what these guys are actually doing. We do have 2 gas down in a factory with no expansion coming up for Metal Guitarist. We do have a expansion coming down for our yellow Terran player with a reactor on that barrack. So it does look like he's going to be going for more of a heavy marine style to cover up for this expansion. If he's able to actually hold whatever it is that our green Terran has in mind, he will of course be ahead in economy. But it looks like we are going to be seeing a 1-1-1 type push from our Terran player. Is this going to be a cloaked Banshee type play, or is this going to be going for an early siege tank contain? Early siege tank contains are actually really powerful on this map. There's plenty of space for you to approach from both angles, approaching the natural expansion, and the natural expansion is actually pretty friendly to throwing. Like, I've won a couple TvTs on this map by just throwing down bunkers and going for a very hard contain off of a 1-1-1. But it does actually look like we are going to be having a Banshee opening a cloaked Banshee opening, as a matter of fact, from our green Terran player, Metal Guitarist. So it doesn't actually look like he is going for a super early siege tank contain. It looks like he is going to be going for Banshees instead. That could work, but we do have a reactor down on this barracks already. We have 2 additional barracks, both with tech labs. That's probably going to start researching stim and combat shields, and we are going to have a lot of Marines out in production. But what we don't have is an engineering bay. We do, of course, have these 2 orbitals. They will allow for One Word Poem to have scan energy to deal with those Banshees, but he doesn't have any turrets down yet. He doesn't even have an engineer. He's not even beginning to construct an engineering bay. This is one of those things that always puzzles me when Terrans do this in this matchup. You guys know, all of you Terrans that watch this know, in TvT, Banshees are such a popular opening. Why don't you go for an engineering bay earlier? Especially if you're going for this, style of heavy marine where you want upgrades as soon as you can get them. Why wouldn't you go for an engineering bay? So you're finally going for an engineering bay. Thank you, One Word Poem, for finally listening to me. Fortunately for you, Guitarist Banshee is still on the other side of the map, so you do actually have some time to get a turret up. Will you actually build a turret? Will you actually be able to build a turret in that time? I don't actually know. So let's see if you're able to get that turret up in time. We do have Marines that are moving out on the map. We do have a lot of Marines already on the field for Metal Guitarist. Combat shields will be, of course, finishing before those Marines actually get there, but they are not actually going to commit to an attack. They are going to turn around. We do have a Banshee approaching to our Yellow Terran's expansion. There are no turrets in place. All of the Marines are out of position. This Banshee will get a ton of kills before those Marines actually get back, or will it? Will she actually be able to get many kills? She only managed to hit 1 or 2 SCVs right now, and no Marines are actually coming back. He is really just committing into an attack. There are no Marines in the base that can really deal with this Banshee, and the Banshee does, of course, have cloak. There is a turret going down. Metal Guitarist, if you're able to snipe the SCV making that turret, you will get a lot of SCV kills. But we do have Marines coming up the ramp into Metal Guitarist base, but this siege tank is going to, of course, repel them. Alright, so Metal Guitarist is now targeting that turret. That turret is not going to actually be able to get up. There are no SCVs actually continuing to produce it, and the turret is actually going to be mass repaired just in time. That Banshee does go down. That was a really, really close save by our Yellow Terran player, so he was actually able to get rid of that Banshee. Both sides have pretty much shut down the openings that the other one has gone for, but of course, One Word Poem did go for that earlier expand build, so his economy is superior to what Metal Guitarist has. Metal Guitarist needs to utilize the one advantage that he has, which is that he has the siege tank. Now, oh, I didn't even see the secondary Banshee. This Banshee is actually in the base right now, but those Marines do have combat shields and stim, so this Banshee could be killed relatively easily within a scan, but I don't think that there is any more scans left. No, One Word Poem does not have a scan left. What Metal Guitarist should do is take care of as many of these Marines as he can, but he doesn't realize that his opponent doesn't have any scan energy left. So he's not actually using this Banshee in the one window of opportunity he has to use it. This is a pretty big deal. But we do have another attack coming in at the expansion of One Word Poem. We do have a siege tank that is already down. We do have Marines that are clearing out a lot of this, but that is too many Marines. That single siege tank is not going to be enough to hold back a stim push, and here we go. Stim Marines are coming through. They are not, however, sniping that siege tank. He needs to snipe the siege tank. The siege tank in siege mode is killing a lot of Marines, but the Marines are going to be able to clear out the remainder of Metal Guitarist's army, and actually Metal Guitarist is in a pretty bad spot. He hasn't really done much to deny the superior economy of his opponent, and his opponent is now catching up in tech. So he has not done very much damage with those Banshees. That attack has failed, and really, I don't know how he's going to be able to follow this up. Now, One Word Poem does have this factory down. He is able to start producing siege tanks of his own, but he's also able to make Vikings too to counter those pesky Banshees. But he isn't really doing very much in the way of advancing his tech. He is trying to breach the front door of Metal Guitarist. That won't work. That Banshee and that Marine are going to be able to repel that attack. And actually, where are the remainder of One Word Poem's units? He isn't actually macroing all that well behind this. He isn't really making that much in the way of units right now. He is making a siege tank. He is now starting siege mode, and he is making a medevac. So he is utilizing that superior economy. Both players' supply are still very low at this point, which is pretty normal when you play TvT like this, and that is a lot of mules that are being dropped. Okay, so these two players are not actually completely on top of their macro, but they are actually demonstrating a pretty decent showcase so far. We have another Banshee coming in here. There is still no turret over on this side. There are no Vikings in production. There are Marines that are coming over there. They might be able to snipe that Banshee if Metal Guitarist isn't paying attention. Is he going to lose that Banshee because he's not paying attention? He does. He wasn't paying attention to that Banshee. That Banshee did, of course, go down, but she did manage to take a Marine with her. Alright, so these medevacs are going to further increase the cost effectiveness of these upgraded Marines that our Yellow Terran player is going for. We don't have any upgrades on the Marines for Metal Guitarist just yet. He still doesn't have combat shields. He is now just researching stim. So the tech advantage is now actually going to be going to our Yellow Terran player because Siege Mode is actually finished for him too. So the only advantage now that Metal Guitarist has as far as tech goes is that Banshee. Our Yellow Terran player is ahead in workers. He is ahead in bases. He will be taking a third base shortly. His tech is better. He should drop down an armory and a second engineering bay for further upgrades, but he isn't really doing that. He is going to be moving out on the map for an attack. That is 2 siege tanks down. That should be able to deny this, but he should be able to take down at least one of those siege tanks. Here he goes. Stim running in. He is going to take down that first siege tank. That second siege tank is, of course, pummeling those Marines. Those Marines need to get rid of that siege tank. They're taking a lot of damage from that siege tank. That is going to force back the army of One Word Poem. This Cloak Banshee is going to deny this siege tank. Is he going to be able to get a scan to take down that Banshee? Nope. That siege tank is going to continue to deal a lot of damage to those Marines. Metal Guitarist should hold this attack. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to hold this attack. We do have a lot more units from One Word Pro coming in here. He needs to regroup. He can't continue to just throw away units at this defensive line that our Green Terran player has set up for himself. But of course, he is finishing that command center. This will allow him to take an additional base and will allow him to further his economic lead over his opponent. He needs a second factory, though. He needs more barracks. He is floating a lot of money right now. He is not macroing this attack nearly. He is not macroing nearly as well as he could be right now. And were he, I'm sure that he would have already won this game. He has a very big advantage over his opponent right now. But Metal Guitarist is establishing that third command center for himself. He will be looking to take an additional expansion of his own. He is continuing to produce Banshees. There are no Vikings out on the field for our Yellow Terran player. He is really only using Marines, Medevacs, and Siege Tanks. I really think a couple Vikings or maybe even a Raven would do a lot in furthering the cost effectiveness of this Marine tank army that he is going for. So he's moving out on the map again. That is still a pretty small force. The supply for both of these players is still pretty low, and it is actually very even right now. One Word Poem is up to 121 supply. Metal Guitarist is at 118 supply, so he's only a couple supply behind his opponent, and he has more siege tanks than his opponent does, actually, as a matter of fact. The siege tank count right now for both players is 5 siege tanks for Metal Guitarist, 3 siege tanks for One Word Poem, and actually Metal Guitarist is going to be hitting this third base while his opponent's army is out of position. He should be able to snipe this base. He is sieging his siege tanks, but he's sieging them right next to the high ground. That will give his opponent a brilliant position to attack from, but he's actually choosing not the less optimal approach. Here comes the army. That's a pretty good siege tank spread. He needs to get these Marines back to cover for those siege tanks, but these siege tanks are dealing a lot of damage to One Word Poem's army, but One Word Poem does have more units. He was able to steamroll through the remainder of that army, and Metal Guitarist is now, once again, without an army. And that's a lot of medevacs. I think One Word Poem is really overmaking medevacs right now. Does he have any more? No, he is not producing any more medevacs. He does need, of course, a few Vikings, which he has now produced, but they are rallied over to this side of the map. Yep. These Vikings were just basically like, alright, we're just going to chill over here. We are going to check out like that mist and that forest down on the floor before we actually head into the battle, because we're not really needed right now, even though they are. These Banshees are still over here, and actually the Siege Tank and this Banshee are just chilling over here. They're not actually like too afraid of that army from our opponent. And actually, that gives me something. Yeah, there it is. There's the noisy waterfall. You guys hear that? That is the loudest waterfall in the game. That is the loudest doodad in StarCraft 2. And I was just remembering that that waterfall was on this map. So thank you for Day9 for pointing out that that waterfall is actually there. Or was that DJ Wheat? I think that may have been DJ Wheat that pointed out how loud that waterfall was. You know, actually, as a matter of fact, for how far behind Metal Guitarist was a few minutes ago, he's actually completely caught up to his opponent. The only advantage that his opponent really has on him right now are those upgrades on those Marines, which could be a big deal if One Word Poem was attacking with larger armies, but he isn't. He is continuing to attack with these small armies, and he's continuing to attack into siege tanks. These tanks are already sieged, man. Why are you continuing to attack into them like this? You're just losing a lot of units when you don't need to. And actually, he might lose all those medevacs. Those medevacs are completely exposed. Those Marines are, of course, chasing them down, and we don't have any more units over on this side of the map. So, both of these players are having a difficult time attacking into their opponent right now, which And this is really just allowing them to kind of catch up to each other. So the supply for both players is actually very similar. The worker count for a Yellow Terran player is still much higher than his opponent. He actually has too many SCVs at this point. 83 SCVs is too much, guys. You really only need about 70 to 75 SCVs, no matter how many bases you're on. If you need more money, that's when you start constructing additional orbital commands for additional mules. You don't need more SCVs. They are really just hogging supply that you could have in your army. So even though the supply for both players is actually pretty similar, Metal Guitarist actually has a larger army. Yeah, he has a larger army despite the fact that he is behind in supply because his opponent has so many SCVs. And we have another engagement over here, but of this time, however, One Word Poem is the one that has siege tanks in siege mode, and Metal Guitarist is the one that is attacking into them without it. So both players are not really actually playing the siege tank wars we are used to seeing. They are playing a more reckless, aggressive style of siege tank play, and these Vikings are now just checking out this base. They are pretty much like, you know, weren't we supposed to be doing something right now? Aren't there some banshees we're supposed to be taking care of? No, man. Let's just chill over here. We're now gonna take a really good look at that lava that's over there. But oh no, there's Marines! There's Marines! Jimmy! Jimmy! That's it's an Independence Day reference for you guys. I know, that was a really bad one. I'm sorry. It's still pretty early in the morning for me. So this attack actually might be able to deny this base from our parent. That was a really good lift off before those siege tanks were actually able to get a good shot off. A lot of SCVs are going down for Metal Guitarist. He does, of course, still have a superior army, but that is a lot of siege tanks. He cannot assault into this position. He needs to figure out something else that he wants to do. If he attacks into that position, he will, of course, lose his entire army. He needs to do something different, but those Cloaked Banshees might give him the opportunity he needs to take down. And actually, with that unsiege, that will allow Metal Guitarist to take down that siege tank army, but the siege tanks are now in siege mode. Metal Guitarist is losing a lot of SCVs. He still has those Cloaked Banshees that are down on the field, but those Banshees have been scanned. He will lose a couple more Banshees, and now, actually, this is the first decisive lead that One Word Poem has been able to secure in this game since the very beginning. He is taking that 4th base expansion down over here at the base that used to be a gold base.